In this video, we're going to be talking about transformations of objects by using the absolute positioning. So positioning is actually quite an important property on CSS as it determines the position method being used. There are a number of them. For the purpose of this video, we are just going to focus on absolute position, but if you used fixed position, it kind of would be the same thing, and we'll sort of just glance over that. A quick note, and it's quite important, is that if you set an element's position to absolute, the parent element's position should be either relative or absolute. If it's not relative or absolute, then when you set the position information, you're going to get some odd results. So we've set the div's position to absolute, and we can set the, well, first of all, note that we haven't set the left and the top, and so the layout that we're currently getting is the default layout as per the DOM. If, however, we say that left is equal to 0, we can now see that it's absolutely positioning the item to the left 0. And if I say the top is 0, I can absolutely position it to the top. So now it's in the top left-hand corner, but I can also say, no, I want you to be absolutely on the right-hand side of things. To move an object on screen, though, we don't want to use the left and top positionings. So if I'm dragging or dropping an element as an example, I want to rather use the transform property on the CSS. And in this case, we want to say we want to translate it. So translate sets the X and the Y position. You can see here, though, that even if I set a lot of values here, it's not based upon the container, though it's based upon where it was originally. But in the examples that we're going to be following later on in other videos, we will actually want to follow the mouse pointer, and so it's important for us to have to reset what the top and the left is to 0 and 0, so that our positions here is absolutely 100 pixels from the top and 100 pixels from the left, based on the left and the top of the container that it is in, not what the original location was. So it's a bit of a caveat. It's important to just note there. The other thing that's important here is that if I change this to the right as an example, you'll see that the element is kind of gone. It's fallen off screen. It's far to the right hand side now. So in cases like that, I actually want to bring this in screen and say, well, it's 100 pixels from the right, but I have to minus the X so that it comes back into the screen, but 100 from the right. Okay, let's put the left back, and we'll put this back. So as you can see now, we have a container. It's absolutely positioned. We've taken the div, made it an absolute position. We've set the default coordinates of our left and the top to 0, 0, meaning the top left corner of the container, and we said that this div should be 100 pixels from the left and 100 pixels from the top. In other words, your X and your Y coordinates. We can also animate the positioning if we wanted to. We use transitioning for that. In this case, we are going to be transitioning the transform property of the CSS. So we say transform. We want to take 1 second, and we want to use the ease out function on our animation. So if we now reset this to 0 and 0, you can see that as I'm actually making the changes, the div is moving on the screen. Now, the reason why we use transform is because it's hardware accelerated. So we've spoken about getting the absolute positioning of this element. Let's just quickly have a look at what happens when it's fixed. So the absolute position has to do with the container that the element is in. If we make it fixed, however, you'll see that the element has now moved from where it was when it was absolute. So that's absolute, that's fixed. Why? What's the difference? The difference is that fixed works on the screen coordinates. So in other words, the top left-hand corner of your browser would be 0, 0. So let's take this transform out completely. You'll see it fits at 0, 0 of the screen, but when I make it absolute, it's 0, 0 of the container that is in. So when I want to work with an element and I'm using the screen coordinates per se, then it's fine to make it the element fixed. But if I want it to behave relatively to its container, I want to make it absolute.